Now, Brattle's $2.0 trillion, Brattle Group was the firm that estimated this. About half of it's in the generation area, about 15% is transmission, still a lot of money, but quite a bit less. And the rest of it's in distribution. That's the lines that run down the alley or undergrounds in your neighborhoods, the lower level voltage lines. And AMI, which is automatic metering or advanced metering technologies, smart meters, and also spending money on demand response, the ability to allow customers to actually reduce demand when peak is high on the utility system. Now, I told you the U.S. fleet is aging. There's the breakdown in 2010 of the U.S. fleet by fuel type. So you can see coal and natural gas dominate. Wind is a now small but growing sliver. Hydro is that sliver, but it's pretty much fixed. There's not a new hydro even possible. So what about how old are these plants? Well, this will show you. This shows the vintage of the plant, the year in which a certain amount of capacity was built. And you can see from this that the coal, which is the black on this, the mean age of coal plants is about 1971 or so, which if you add 12 years to 30 to 29 years, you get 41 years old. That's kind of the mean age of coal plants. Now, many of them have a depreciation life of 30 or 35 years, so they're probably past that, many of these plants. Any plant tends to get, again, these are, at each point, this represents new construction. And as you move along, these get more and more efficient, but they're old. The blue in here is hydro, which is pretty much, as I said, fixed and not growing. This color, which is supposed to be, is the nuclear plant. You see the nukes were built in the 70s and 80s for the most part. No new nukes really after 1990. Wind doesn't show up until the very end here in 2006 and thereafter. This is all natural gas. Now, I want to just say a couple things about what this is. I told you this was gigawatts of capacity. This isn't energy. This isn't the amount these plants generate. It's the peak that they could generate at. Coal tends to be much more of a base load. So if you were looking at a percentage on an energy basis, the base load plants, the nuclear and coal, will be a lot larger portions of the scrap. But this is on capacity. Everybody know what I'm talking about here? Say some yeses. Okay, good. If you go back, again, this isn't my study yet. I'm reporting on others that were used as the basis for this. If you go back and look at regions of the country, the West is projected to add about $200 billion in investment over this 20 years. The Midwest, more than $220 billion. The South, which is largely Texas and Florida, really, those are the drivers, and Georgia in the South, is a whopping $450 billion over that 10 years. And the Northeast, which really isn't growing much in load, will require much less investment. That's the estimate. Now, don't worry about what the components of this are. You'll see a certain amount is renewable, certain amounts of combustion turbine. Nuclear is a big chunk. These were the estimates done for this report in 2010. A lot of the cost numbers have shifted. The height of these columns will be about the same, but the mixture inside will probably vary. Now, I told you that utilities were under a lot of financial strain with this. This is, I think, a very interesting graph. This is the bond or the financial rating by the Standard & Poor's of the world of utilities every 10 years beginning in 1970 and working up to 2010. Just look at the first column. In 1970, 40% more or less of all utilities were single A rated, and that's my telephone, let's just ignore it, see if it goes away. Okay? About half of the utilities were double A, and there were even some triple A utilities in there. Sorry about that. By the time we get to 2010, the AAA utilities have disappeared. The AA utilities have practically disappeared. There's only a few single A utilities. Triple B and triple B minus are the predominant financial ratings. A triple B minus is the lowest rating you can have and still be financial grade. Most institutional investors and funds could not even buy a triple B, a double B or a single B or a C rated utility. So in all, the utilities are weaker than they were financially. They were weaker than the last time, which is going to make all this more challenging. I keep adding these bricks to the wall here to convince you we have to really, as a society, pay attention to this because we could go way wrong and cost ourselves a lot of money. So that's the question. How do we spend it wisely? This is, for many people, one of the more interesting charts in the book. This is a consensus estimate of the levelized cost of power of a bunch of different kinds of resources, ranging at the bottom here in the list, energy efficiency through natural gas, wind, geothermal, biomass, large PV, solar thermal, pulverized coal, regular coal, nuclear, or coal integrated gasification combined cycles, that's coal gasification, nuclear, and coal with gasification and combined carbon storage. So anyway, let's go to the costs. The length of these bars along the bottom here represents cost per megawatt hour. So, for example, onshore wind, the cost all in of inshore wind is somewhere between $50 a megawatt hour and $125, something like that. That's the cost curve. This is the subsidized with federal incentives built into the cost. That's the one we actually see. So every time there's a pair of bars, one is the total cost with incentives, and the other is the total cost without incentives. Now let's just say a few things about this. You'll see some of these pretty wide ranges. That depends upon the area of the country you're in. Wind in Nebraska and Colorado is down here in the very lower reaches of these costs. By the time you get to, I don't know, in Ohio or certainly Georgia, where where the wind just doesn't blow that much, you see much higher costs for installing wind. So this is the consensus estimate of these costs from three organizations: the Energy Information Administration from the Department of Energy, the California Energy Commission, and the investment group Lazar. So they put all their numbers together and came up with this chart. So a couple more things to say about it. The red, yellow, and orange colors up here represent the cost of coal under three different assumptions about the cost of carbon attached to that. So stated another way, this point right here is the cost of coal with no carbon cost. That's the cost of coal with $15 a ton carbon cost, $30 a ton, and $45 a ton. Everybody with me on that? So that's depending which assumptions you want to make about the cost of carbon. For natural gas, the carbon numbers are smaller because it emits less carbon dioxide, so there's less, and of course the renewables have no carbon impact. So we're going to come back to the ingredients of this, but this starts to show you what the relative costs of generation resources are. So we took all these numbers and forgot. I added this to the slide. So with incentives, without incentives, I shouldn't have said damn. I'm sorry. I got thrown out of a meeting earlier because damn apparently is not said in Nebraska. Is that right? Okay, sorry about that. With incentives, without incentives, and as I said, those are the CO2 costs, just so you know what those are. Now, there's a caveat to this graph. We took a graph which was produced in 2010 by three different organizations. We didn't want to modify any of the assumptions, so we had a consistent set of data, even if things had changed since then. We didn't want to have to explain changes we made to a study, so we left it alone. But here are some notes about that study. First of all, the unadjusted 2010 cost estimates were used for consistency. I just said that. We made no adjustments to them. The costs for wind and photovoltaics have fallen sharply in the last 2 years, much more quickly than these studies anticipated in 2010. So you have to mentally make adjustments on wind and solar. They've gone down.